Imagine tuning into your favorite cozy television show, right? Like, imagine you sit down to watch The Great British Baking Show.
Oh, I love that show.
Right, everyone loves it. It's safe. But imagine right in the middle of judging a perfectly lovely Victoria sponge.
Huh?
Paul Hollywood just pulls out a weapon and takes the entire tent hostage.
I mean, that would be...
You would genuinely think you're hallucinating, wouldn't you?
You'd probably check your television to see if the channels had somehow crossed over.
Exactly. The tonal shift would be so violent, so completely untethered from the world you signed up to watch, that it would literally break your brain a little bit.
Because it violates the core premise of why you tune into a show like that in the first place. You want comfort.
Well, for millions of British television viewers, something remarkably similar to that psychological whiplash actually happened.
It really did.
And it wasn't a prank, you know? It wasn't a glitch in the broadcast.
No, it was a deliberate creative choice.
So today, we are doing a deep dive into an infamous, baffling period of television. We're talking about Coronation Street's 2017 to 2018 season.
A window of time so relentlessly grim, so hyper-violent and chaotic, that the fandom to this day refers to it simply as the Hell Era.
The Hell Era. I mean, just the name alone tells you everything you need to know.
It is a phenomenal case study in media, really.
Absolutely.
Because it forces us to ask a profound question about the entertainment industry today. Like, what happens when a legacy institution is that, like, something slow, deliberate, and deeply familiar panics.
Panics in the face of the modern streaming era.
Exactly. They panic and try to turn themselves into an adrenaline-fueled spectacle.
So to even begin to understand why this era felt like the world was ending for longtime viewers, we really need to establish the bedrock of what Coronation Street actually is.
Right, especially for anyone listening outside the UK who might not be familiar with it.
Yeah, because this isn't just a daily drama. It's an absolute cultural institution.
It premiered way back in 1960.
1960. I mean, for over 5 decades leading up to this point, it functioned as a masterclass in grounded working-class storytelling.
It is set in Weatherfield, which is a fictionalized town based in Salford, Greater Manchester.
Right.
And the geography is vital here. It's a street of terraced houses, meaning the homes literally share walls.
You hear your neighbors coughing.
Exactly. And the local pub, the Rover's Return, is the absolute epicenter of the community. Everyone lives on top of each other.
It's so dense.
Very dense. The show was built on the mundane realism of Northern English life.
You had characters like Ken Barlow, who had quite literally been on the show since episode 1.
Which is just an incredible run for an actor.
Or Gail Platt, whose entire adult life, every marriage, every family feud, played out on these cobbles over 40 years.
Right. These weren't action heroes.
No. They weren't glamorous socialites living in mansions. They were factory workers, barmaids, corner shop owners.
They were your neighbors?
Yeah, you invited them into your living room multiple times a week.
Which cultivated a deeply parasocial relationship with the audience.
100%.
Because when a show runs for 50 years, the audience isn't just watching a narrative unfold, they are sharing a timeline.
You age with them.
Exactly. And the pacing of Coronation Street was originally designed to mimic the rhythm of real life.
Right. Yes. There were affairs and tragic accidents over the years. It wasn't totally boring.
Of course.
Yeah.
But the genius of the show was its tonal equilibrium.
I always think about that balance as the hot pot rule.
The hot pot rule, yes.
Like, you could have an episode dealing with a genuinely devastating marital breakdown. Really heavy stuff.
Right.
But right in the middle of it, the narrative would just cut to the pub, where 2 characters are having an utterly petty, hilarious argument over the price of a pint.
Or a recipe for Lancashire hot pot.
Exactly. And that comedy wasn't just filler, was it?
No, not at all. It was an essential pressure valve.
Yeah.
It told the audience, yes, life is hard and tragedy strikes, but tomorrow we will still go to work.
We will still complain about the weather.
Exactly. It reinforced safety. But in 2017, that safety net was systematically dismantled.
Dismantle is the perfect word for it. So let's look at the catalyst.
Right. 2017 was a monumental year for the show regardless.
Yeah, they hit their 10,000th episode.
Which is mind-boggling.
But 2 major behind-the-scenes shifts fundamentally altered the show's DNA around this time. First, the network mandated a shift to 6 episodes a week.
A massive workload increase.
And second, they brought in a new series producer, Kate Oates.
Now, Kate Oates is a brilliant television producer. It really should be noted.
Oh, for sure. Her track record is solid.
She came over from another British soap, Emmerdale, where she had been incredibly successful.
She really boosted their ratings, didn't she?
She did. She orchestrated these highly intense, dark, spectacular story arcs.
But Emmerdale is set in a rural village.
Exactly. It historically leaned a bit more into heightened, almost gothic melodrama because they had the space for it.
But dropping that playbook into the terraced houses of working-class Manchester, that is a different beast entirely.
It really is.
It feels like the mandate from the top down became, the streaming giants are winning. We need bigger shocks.
Faster pacing.
Constant stakes to keep people from changing the channel.
Right. And the mission of our deep dive today is to explore how that exact philosophy played out.
Prioritizing spectacle over character.
Precisely. We need to look at the bizarre tonal dissonance it created and how it fractured the long-standing trust of the audience.
Because the underlying tension of this entire era is really that conflict, right? The traditional slow-burn soap opera model versus the algorithm-driven demands of modern television.
It's a clash of two entirely different eras of media.
So let's get into it. Let's look at the sheer volume of trauma the show unloads right at the start of 2017.
That's a lot.
If you were a viewer, the barrage of misery hitting your screen was almost physically exhausting.
Just relentless.
Let's just run through the first half of the year. So in January, Michelle and Steve undergo a late miscarriage.
Very difficult scenes.
They lose their baby, Ruari, at 23 weeks. It was a phenomenally heavy, devastating watch.
It was a vital piece of television, honestly. Incredibly brave.
Oh, the acting was phenomenal.
And it raised immense awareness for a taboo subject.
But, and here's the problem, there is absolutely no time for the audience or the characters to process that grief.
None at all.
Because the very next month, in February, Leanne Battersby goes into labor and gives birth in a broken-down elevator.
As you do.
Right. And that kicks off a massive secret baby plotline because the father of that baby is secretly Steve.
The same man who just lost a child weeks prior.
Exactly. It's so much to put on one character. Then, before you can catch your breath, March hits.
March was huge.
The 80-something-year-old patriarch, Ken Barlow, is violently pushed down a flight of stairs.
Ken Barlow, a national treasure.
Pushed down the stairs, which launches this dark, sprawling, attempted murder mystery involving his own family members.
The velocity of the plotting becomes the main issue here.
And the velocity only increases. By May, the show enters incredibly dark territory.
The Bethany Platt storyline.
Yes. Bethany, a teenager, is subjected to a protracted, harrowing grooming and sexual exploitation ring run by two older men, Nathan and Neil.
Another incredibly heavy, issue-led storyline.
And then Summer arrives. Another teenager, Summer Spellman, is maliciously pushed off a roof.
Right.
And shortly after that, the Rovers Return pub, the absolute heart of the street, is deliberately set on fire with characters trapped inside.
When you lay it out chronologically like that, you really see the mechanical strain on the production.
It sounds insane. But wait, I have to ask you about this.
Sure.
Soaps have always had murders, affairs, and tragedies.
That is true. That's the genre.
Even Coronation Street had a famous serial killer, Richard Hillman, back in 2003.
A legendary storyline.
So why is this specific 2017 barrage such a structural problem? Is it just that audiences got softer?
No, it has nothing to do with audience fragility.
All right.
It has everything to do with the mathematics of television production.
Math. Okay, break that down for me.
Let's look at that 6-episode-a-week mandate.
Right, the new schedule.
A show airing 6 times a week is producing roughly 3 hours of broadcast television every 7 days.
Which is a crazy amount of TV.
That is essentially 156 hours of narrative a year.
Wow.
Now, compare that to a prestige streaming show, which produces maybe 8 or 10 hours a year.
Like a season of Stranger Things or something.
Exactly. So what you have with Coronation Street is an industrialized narrative factory.
An industrialized narrative factory. I like that.
And when you are feeding a machine that requires 156 hours of story, you burn through natural character-driven conflict very quickly.
I see. Because you can't just have them chatting over tea for 156 hours.
Right. How many times can a couple argue over finances before the audience gets totally bored?
Yeah, that makes sense.
To fill that endless airtime and keep the pacing fast, the writer's room is practically forced to manufacture artificial external shocks.
Murders, kidnappings, explosions.
Exactly. The transition to 6 episodes a week fundamentally altered the genre of the show from a character study to a plot-driven thriller.
Ah, so it's a structural necessity born out of airtime demands. But it kills the breathing room.
Yes. Breathing room is the oxygen of a continuous drama.
Okay, I love that analogy. Tell me more about that.
When a character suffers a trauma, say, their house burns down, the dramatic payoff isn't just the explosion itself.
Right.
The real payoff is the subsequent 3 weeks of them sitting in the pub, shell-shocked, trying to figure out how to pay for new shoes.
Yeah, the mundane reality of the tragedy.
That mundane aftermath is where the characters become human.
It's where the audience exercises their empathy.
Exactly. But in the 2017 Hell era, there was zero aftercare for the characters or the audience.
Because they were already on to the next explosion.
Right. The show mistook relentlessness for intensity. By stacking trauma on top of trauma, they didn't amplify the drama.
They suffocated it.
They suffocated it completely. You can only sustain a state of high adrenaline shock for so long before the viewer's emotional receptors simply fry.
And they go numb.
They go completely numb.
Which brings us perfectly to the absolute poster child for this suffocating numbness.
I know exactly who you're going to bring up.
A character whose shadow grew so massive, it essentially blocked out the sun on the show for 2 years. We need to talk about the evolution of Pat Phelan.
Yes. Connor McIntyre's portrayal of Pat Phelan, it is a fascinating pivot point for the show.
It really is, because the character didn't start out as a cartoon supervillain.
Not at all.
He started out incredibly grounded. When he first appeared a few years prior, Phelan was a local, dodgy builder.
Right, a contract.
He was corrupt, he was manipulative, he scammed people out of money, he felt deeply, uncomfortably real.
He was the kind of malicious, predatory contractor you could absolutely imagine running a scam in a working-class neighborhood.
Exactly. He represented a recognizable domestic evil.
And the threat he posed was financial ruin and psychological bullying.
Which fits perfectly within the established rules of Coronation Street.
But by the time we are deep into 2017, the writers have transformed him.
Oh, completely transformed him. He becomes a seemingly invincible serial killer with James Bond villain levels of absurdity.
It really escalates.
Just to give you a sense of how untethered from reality this got. Phelan kidnaps a character named Andy Carver.
Poor Andy.
And he doesn't just tie him up for a weekend to scare him. Phelan locks Andy in a dark, subterranean basement bunker.
And keeps him captive there for 9 months.
9 months. And we must emphasize the setting here.
Yes.
This bunker is in Salford.
We are not in the remote Scottish Highlands.
No. We are in a densely populated urban neighborhood of terrace housing where the walls are paper thin.
And everyone constantly looks out their windows to gossip. That's the whole premise of the show.
Exactly. The idea that a local builder is maintaining a secret hostage compound beneath the pavement for almost a year.
Sneaking down food and water.
And not a single soul notices. It is completely preposterous.
The narrative strain required to sustain that plot line actively damaged the world building of the show.
Yeah, you stop believing in Weatherfield as a real place.
And it wasn't just illogical, it was psychologically oppressive for the viewer.
Oppressive is a good word for it.
Because people tune into a soap to feel a sense of community. Instead, night after night, the show would cut to scenes of a terrified, unwashed man chained to a wall in the dark.
Sobbing and begging for his life.
It turns a domestic drama into a hostage thriller.
And it builds to a climax in October 2017 that honestly still defies belief, considering when it aired.
The double murder.
Yes. Phelan decides he needs to tie up loose ends. So he brings another former associate, a man named Vinny Ashford, down into this bunker.
Right.
Phelan hands a gun to the broken, desperate Andy. He forces Andy to execute Vinny.
Which is horrifying on its own.
Andy pulls the trigger, and then, mere seconds later, Phelan takes the gun and shoots Andy point blank. A double execution.
And this aired at 8:30 on a Friday evening.
On a family show? I mean, I know the UK has strict broadcasting regulations regarding what can be shown on television before a certain time. This has to cross a line, right?
It definitely tested the limits of the UK's watershed rules.
Okay, remind me how the watershed works exactly.
So, for context, the watershed is a strict broadcasting guideline in Britain that states television content unsuitable for children. So, excessive violence, profanity, adult themes cannot be broadcast before 9:00 p.m.
And Coronation Street historically airs at 7:30 and 8:30 in the evening.
Well before the watershed.
So broadcasting a double execution in that time slot sparked an immediate uproar.
Absolutely. 541 viewers filed official complaints to Ofcom.
Wow.
And Ofcom is the UK government-approved regulatory and competition authority for broadcasting.
541 official complaints is massive for an episode of a soap.
It really is.
It means people were so disturbed they actually looked up the government website, filled out a form, and demanded an investigation. So what did Ofcom do? Because I'd imagine a double murder breaks the code.
This is where regulatory logic and narrative logic diverge, unfortunately.
Oh.
Ofcom investigated, but they ultimately cleared the show.
Really?
They ruled that Coronation Street was not in breach of the broadcasting code.
How is a double execution not a breach?
Their rationale leaned heavily on the concept of audience anticipation.
Anticipation?
Yes. They argued that because Pat Phelan was an established, long-running villain, regular viewers would have anticipated a violent climax.
That feels like a stretch.
Furthermore, the network had placed very clear, explicit verbal warnings immediately before the episodes aired, advising viewers of disturbing scenes.
So the regulatory defense is essentially, we gave you a warning and you knew the guy was evil, so the violence is justified.
Legally, yes. They were completely in the clear. But narratively, culturally, the damage was catastrophic.
Because a show's survival doesn't depend on Ofcom regulations.
No, it depends on an implicit contract with the audience.
The psychological contract.
Exactly. Every fictional universe has a set of physical and moral rules.
Right, like gravity exists and actions have consequences.
In the world of Coronation Street, the police exist, neighbors talk.
People notice things.
When you introduce a character who can maintain a dungeon, orchestrate double murders, and operate with supernatural immunity to law enforcement, you break the internal logic of the universe.
And it makes everyone else look completely stupid.
That's the real casualty here.
Look at Eileen Grimshaw, Phelan's wife.
Oh, poor Eileen.
Eileen is a legacy character, introduced way back in 2000. For nearly 2 decades, her entire defining trait was that she was a fierce, sharp, street-smart single mother who suffered absolutely no fools.
She was notoriously sharp.
She could spot a liar from a mile away.
But to keep the serial killer plot functioning, the writers had to systematically dismantle Eileen's intelligence.
She is living in the same house as a man who is disappearing at all hours,
Acting incredibly suspiciously.
periodically getting arrested, and she just wanders around completely oblivious for over a year.
It was so frustrating to watch.
They sacrificed a beloved character's core identity just to prop up the villain's storyline.
And when you break the rules of the world to that degree, you devalue every other storyline on the show.
Because the stakes are ruined.
Precisely. Why should the audience care if a character is struggling to pay their electricity bill, or worried about a minor argument with their spouse, if a serial killer could just shoot them in the head tomorrow with zero consequences?
The stakes become completely skewed,
It creates a sense of apathy.
which is the perfect entry point to talk about the absolute fever dream that was the tonal whiplash of late 2017.
Oh, the scheduling of intersecting storylines during this period was genuinely disorienting.
Because Phelan's reign of terror wasn't happening in isolation. It was happening parallel to the show, trying to maintain its traditional elements.
They were still trying to do the comedy.
Okay, I have a question about this. Because earlier we talked about the hot pot rule. The idea that a show needs comic relief to balance the darkness.
Yes.
Isn't that a tradition as old as time? I mean, Shakespeare does it.
Sure.
You have the porter scene in Macbeth making knock-knock jokes right after the king is brutally murdered. So why does the comedic relief work in a classic tragedy, but fail so spectacularly during the Hell era?
That's a great comparison. It really comes down to integration versus competition.
What do you mean?
Well, in a Shakespearean tragedy, the comic relief is thematically integrated. The porter is making jokes about hell and damnation. His comedy actually comments on the darkness surrounding it.
I see. It serves the primary narrative.
Exactly. But in the Hell era, the comedy and the horror were completely siloed from one another.
They weren't speaking to each other.
No, they were competing channels of reality occupying the exact same physical space.
Right, like you would have a scene of Andy Carver weeping, chained into a radiator in the dark, begging for his life.
And then the camera literally cuts across the street to the corner shop.
Where Norris Cole is having a vaudevillian slapstick meltdown about the quality of a new brand of digestive biscuits.
The proximity is what makes it grotesque.
Yes.
When the comedy is completely disconnected from the stakes of the horror happening 50 feet away, it doesn't relieve the tension.
It just makes the characters engaging in the comedy look unhinged.
Or callous. The comedy feels tasteless, and the horror feels cheapened by the immediate pivot to a punchline.
And nothing, absolutely nothing encapsulates this era's total loss of tonal control, quite like the downfall of Billy Mayhew.
Oh, Billy.
If a historian ever needs one storyline to define the chaos of 2017 Coronation Street, it is this one. Let's look at Billy.
He was a great character initially.
He is introduced in 2014 as the local vicar. Warm, gentle, progressive. He serves as the moral compass for the street.
He was introduced as a modern, compassionate representation of the church, and he was very well received by the audience.
Fast forward to late 2017. Through a sequence of events so wildly convoluted they feel randomly generated,
It was very messy.
Billy the vicar somehow ends up falling off a cliff.
An actual physical cliff edge.
An actual cliff. He survives, but he is prescribed heavy painkillers for his injuries. And within a shockingly compressed timeline, this gentle, moral vicar develops an addiction that escalates all the way to heroin.
The speed of the descent is what gave viewers whiplash.
It was warp speed. The escalation leads to a scene that actually aired on British television, which I honestly still struggle to comprehend.
The church scene.
Billy, wearing his literal clerical collar, meets a drug dealer inside a church, purchases heroin, sits down in the pews, and injects it.
And we have to give credit where it's due. Daniel Brocklebank, the actor playing Billy, gave an incredibly committed performance.
Oh, he really went for it.
He played the harrowing reality of addiction with absolute grueling seriousness.
But the context, I remember watching it and feeling this bizarre sense of comedic outrage.
Right.
It was so surreal, so utterly beyond the parameters of what Coronation Street is, that you almost wanted to laugh.
It felt like a parody of a gritty drama.
Of vicar shooting up at a church pew on a Tuesday evening soap opera.
And that is the ultimate casualty of tonal whiplash. The environment dictates how the audience receives a performance.
Because the show was simultaneously running a cartoonish serial killer plot and broad biscuit comedy, the audience was completely unmoored.
Exactly. When Billy injects the heroin, viewers didn't know how to react. Are we supposed to be heartbroken, shocked? Is this dark comedy?
When the tone is that fractured, serious issues just feel like the writer's spinning a wheel of misery to see what trauma lands on what character next.
And that wheel of misery was particularly devastating to the female characters who had established histories on the show.
Oh, absolutely. If we look at the legacy of Anna Windass during this time, it is incredibly bleak.
Anna was such a strong character.
She was the fiercely protective matriarch of her family, and her history is crucial here.
Remind us about her history with Phelan.
Years prior, when Pat Phelan first appeared as a corrupt builder, he had deliberately driven Anna's family into massive debt.
Right, he set them up.
And then essentially coerced her into sleeping with him to clear it. She was a survivor of extreme psychological and sexual coercion.
Her dynamic with Phelan was rooted in deep systemic trauma.
So how does the Hell era choose to conclude the storyline of this long-standing survivor? Do they give her a triumphant moment of justice?
You would hope so.
Does she get to heal and move on? No. The writers decide that Phelan will frame Anna for GBH.
And for our international listeners, GBH stands for grievous bodily harm.
Right. It's not a minor scuffle.
It is a very serious criminal charge in the UK justice system, carrying severe prison sentences.
She is framed for a violent felony she didn't commit. She goes to trial, she is found guilty, and she is dragged away to prison in handcuffs.
And the timing of this broadcast.
Oh, it happens right around Christmas 2017.
It is the absolute antithesis of the holiday spirit.
It was relentlessly depressing. You take a beloved survivor of abuse, you strip her of her freedom, and you lock her in a cell for the holidays.
While her abuser gets to stand in the local pub drinking a pint and smirking.
It didn't feel like compelling drama. It felt punitive. It felt like the show was actively punishing the audience for caring about her in the first place.
This touches on a fundamental flaw in serialized villainy.
What?
To keep a supervillain dominant, the heroes must constantly be defeated. But if the defeats are too prolonged and too humiliating, the audience stops hoping for justice.
And they simply become exhausted by the cruelty.
Exactly. The emotional investment just flatlines.
But having said all of that, we do have to pivot.
Yes, we do.
Because if we are going to be fair, we must acknowledge that it's all this noise and chaos. The show's production team somehow managed to produce some genuinely brave, socially vital television in the spring of 2018.
It is the great paradox of the Hell era.
It really is.
It contains some of the worst narrative choices in the show's history, running parallel to some of its absolute finest, most impactful work.
Let's delve into the mechanics of these masterpieces. The show tackled two incredibly sensitive subjects: male sexual assault and male suicide.
Both handled with incredible care.
First, there was David Platt. David is a character who literally grew up on screen. The audience had watched him since he was a child.
He's known for being a bit of a tough guy, very sarcastic, very closed off.
Right. And the writers introduced a storyline where David is drugged and raped by a new arrival, a mechanic named Josh Tucker.
The decision to center this narrative on a character like David, who traditionally projected a very macho, deflective exterior, was a brilliant stroke of psychological realism.
It really was.
It challenged the stereotypical assumptions about who can be a victim of assault.
And around the same time, the show executed a storyline involving Aidan Connor, played by Shane Ward.
Aidan was a popular, successful, good-looking factory boss.
But the show slowly depicted him unraveling behind closed doors, culminating in his tragic suicide.
And the impact of these two storylines in the real world was staggering.
We often talk abstractly about the power of television, but the metrics here are undeniable.
Let's talk about the data, because it's important. Following the airing of the David Platt assault storyline, the Charity Survivors Manchester, an organization dedicated to supporting male survivors of sexual abuse, reported a 1,700% increase in calls to their helpline.
1,700% gives me chills just saying it.
It's an incredible statistic.
That represents thousands of men who have been sitting in silence, carrying their trauma alone, watching a fictional character they've known for 20 years go through what they went through.
And that on-screen representation gave them the permission and the courage to pick up the phone and ask for help.
That is television at its absolute highest calling.
And the execution of the Aidan Connor suicide episode was equally meticulous from a production standpoint.
They didn't treat it as a sensational plot twist.
No, the production team worked in tandem with the Samaritans and columned the campaign against leaving miserably for months to ensure the subject was handled with the utmost responsibility.
They even altered the broadcast format, didn't they?
They did. They aired the aftermath of the suicide as a continuous hour-long special.
Wow.
They deliberately removed the commercial breaks so that the emotional weight and the silence of the grief wouldn't be violently interrupted by a bouncy advertisement for car insurance or laundry detergent.
It was incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And what made it so resonant was how it utilized the community aspect of a soap opera.
Yeah.
The show gave this sweeping cinematic monologue to Gail Platt. Gail has lived on the street for 40 years.
She's seen it all.
She stands looking out her window, observing the neighborhood, and delivers a speech about how she knows every cobble, every front door.
But she realizes you never truly know what darkness your neighbors are battling behind closed doors.
The episode ended by highlighting the devastating statistic that 84 men take their own lives in Britain every single week.
It was a soaring achievement. It proved that the soap opera format, with its vast web of interconnected characters, is uniquely equipped to explore how a single tragedy reverberates through an entire community.
Which brings us to the agonizing core of this deep dive.
The contradiction.
If these storylines, David's trauma and Aidan's suicide, were so expertly crafted, so well acted, and generated a 1,700% spike in men seeking help,
how on earth are they still lumped into the hell era?
yes, why didn't these moments redeem the season?
Because context is everything.
Right.
As we noted earlier, the environment dictates how art is received.
Right.
These prestige moments were completely suffocated by the noise surrounding them.
Let's look at the timeline. By April 2018, here is the absolute avalanche of plotting the audience was being asked to absorb simultaneously.
It's dizzying.
You have viewers trying to engage with David Platt's agonizing silent trauma. You have them tracking Aidan Connor's subtle, heartbreaking descent towards suicide.
Both demanding intense emotional investment.
But in the exact same week of episodes, they are also watching Billy the Vicar injecting heroin in a church.
They are watching Bethany Platt, the recent grooming survivor, spiraling and working in a lap dancing club.
They are watching Anna Windass rotting away in a prison cell.
And they are watching Pat Phelan's murder victims finally being excavated from a concrete foundation.
It is just too much.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal example of palate exhaustion.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like if a Michelin star chef serves you a beautifully cooked, delicate cut of steak, but it's plated alongside 10 heavy, greasy, overwhelming side dishes.
You aren't going to be able to taste the steak. The palate is completely ruined.
The audience couldn't give David and Aidan the quiet, reflective attention those storylines demanded because they were still emotionally reeling from the comic book serial killer drama playing out on the same street.
And speaking of the serial killer,
Oh boy.
the climax of Pat Phelan's arc takes us into the summer of 2018.
Which I can only describe as the era's fever dream.
The show essentially abandons the pretense of domestic drama entirely and fully embraces the action genre.
It is spectacular nonsense. Let me set the scene for you.
Please do.
Phelan is finally cornered by the police on a pier. In the struggle, he falls off the pier into the freezing, turbulent sea. He is presumed dead.
The nightmare is over, right?
Wrong. He somehow survives the plunge, drags his body out of the ocean, and hides out in a quaint bed and breakfast under an assumed identity.
Yeah, as serial killers do.
He then decides to return to Weatherfield for one final stand. He crashes Michelle Connor's wedding, shoots the bride,
Barricades himself in the bistro kitchen with hostages.
and is ultimately stabbed to death by Anna Windass, who has just been miraculously released from prison.
Whereupon he dramatically dies in a freezing lake.
It was an operatic level of spectacle. It belonged in a Die Hard movie, not Coronation Street.
It was certainly not a grounded slice of northern life.
No. And the sheer exhaustion of this climax finally triggers a changing of the guard. Series producer Kate Oates departs, and Ian McLeod takes over.
And you can almost feel the corporate panic seeping through the screen at this point.
The directive clearly shifted from make it darker to we need to lighten the mood immediately.
But the execution resulted in a massive overcorrection,
The internet very quickly branded the summer of 2018 the Fat Man Show.
which sounds incredibly blunt.
It does, but it perfectly described the on-screen reality. The show desperately tried to pivot back to comedy by introducing a very loud, broad, physical slapstick storyline centered around Tyrone's new, large neighbor.
It was a total inversion of the tonal whiplash we saw earlier.
Right. Instead of vaudevillian comedy awkwardly interrupting psychological horror, you now had loud, slapstick physical comedy violently jarring against the ongoing prestige trauma narratives.
It's like David Platt dealing with the fallout of his assault and his brief imprisonment.
And the show didn't stop violently shifting gears. By autumn of 2018, they attempt another hard pivot.
They couldn't find a baseline.
They introduce a deeply emotional storyline where a young, pregnant character, Sinead, is diagnosed with cervical cancer. She decides to keep it a secret, and the only person who knows is the patriarch, Ken Barlow.
And suddenly, the aesthetic of the show changes completely yet again.
The directing becomes very stylized. We start getting loaded, cinematic silences, slow emotional zooms, lingering shots on characters' faces.
The show puts on a tuxedo and screams, "Take us seriously" as prestige drama.
But trust, once broken, is exceptionally difficult to rebuild.
It really is. You cannot force your audience to wrestle in the mud for 2 years with secret basement dungeons, double executions, and heroin vicars.
And then instantly put on a tuxedo and demand quiet, respectful reverence.
The audience's emotional receptors have been thoroughly scrambled.
And they still couldn't entirely shake the misery reflex.
No, they couldn't help themselves.
Because while they're trying to execute this dignified, slow-burn cancer storyline with Sinead, they are simultaneously running a plot where Sally Metcalf, a beloved legacy character and the former mayor of Weatherfield,
Is spending Christmas in a prison cell after being framed for fraud?
they locked up another innocent woman for the holidays.
The muscle memory for cruelty was still firmly embedded in the writing room.
So if we pull back and look at this entire chaotic era, we have to ask the ultimate question. Did it work?
Well, if you look at the raw data for 2017, the ratings looked absolutely triumphant.
Really? Triumphant.
Yes, and this is perhaps the most crucial lesson for any media executive listening. Data without deep qualitative context is a trap.
Okay, unpack that. Because the numbers were undeniably huge.
They were. In 2017, Coronation Street averaged 7.66 million viewers.
That's a massive audience.
They hit a staggering peak of 9.4 million viewers for the episode, where Pat Phelan finally confesses his crimes.
Wow.
They commanded a massive 21.7% viewing share for the entire ITV network, and the ultimate feather in their cap. They were consistently thrashing their biggest rival, the BBC's EastEnders, which was hovering around 6.6 million viewers.
So if you're an executive sitting in a boardroom in London looking at a spreadsheet, you are popping champagne.
You are convinced the darkness strategy is a massive success.
But it was a complete and total illusion.
Entirely an illusion. We have to differentiate between habitual TV and event TV.
Right.
Those massive spikes in viewership, the 9.4 million, that is event TV. That is people tuning in specifically for the shock value.
It's slowing down your car on the highway to look at a massive pileup.
Exactly. You stare at the wreckage because it's human nature to look at a spectacle, but you have no desire to live on that highway.
That's such a good point.
The millions who tuned in for Phelan's confession weren't a community of loyal viewers coming home to their favorite cozy show.
They were a transient crowd showing up to watch a public execution.
The peaks were artificially high, but the floor, the baseline of loyal viewers who tune in on a random Tuesday just to see characters chat over a cup of tea, that floor was quietly eroding.
And the long-term data proves it was an illusion, doesn't it?
It does. The sugar crash was brutal. Once the adrenaline of the Hell era wore off, the core audience realized their comforting show was gone.
The trust was broken.
By 2021, the average viewership had collapsed from that 7.66 million high down to 7.1 million.
A noticeable drop.
But far more devastatingly, if you look at the 16 to 34-year-old demographic,
Oh, the crucial younger audience.
the audience that a 50-year-old show desperately needs to capture in order to survive into its next decade, that demographic plummeted by 39%.
39%. That is a generational wipeout.
That's staggering.
It means an entire age group looked at the show and simply decided it had nothing of value for them.
The show traded long-term habitual loyalty for a short-term spike in sensational headlines.
Yeah.
By constantly subjecting the characters to extreme trauma, they told the audience that Weatherfield was no longer a safe, comforting reflection of reality, but a dangerous, unpredictable, and emotionally exhausting place to visit.
And so the audience stopped visiting.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the legacy of this incredible period in television. The 2017 to 2018 Hell era stands as a monumental cautionary tale.
It really does.
It is the story of a beloved institution that fundamentally confused darkness with depth and shock with actual dramatic storytelling.
And there's a broader lesson there, too.
Definitely. Whether you are writing a screenplay, running a corporate brand, or managing a community, there is a universal lesson here. Abandoning your core identity in pursuit of a quick spike in engagement will almost always break the long-term trust of the people who actually sustain you.
It is a profound lesson in the value of knowing exactly what your product is and respecting the psychological contract you have established with your consumers.
But as we wrap up this deep dive into the cobbles, we want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought.
Something to mull over.
We've spent an hour dissecting the flaws of these creative choices.
Yeah.
But if we look at the immense pressure the producers were under in 2017, we have to look at the world rapidly changing around them.
This was the moment when the dominance of on-demand streaming truly solidified. Suddenly, audiences had infinite, instant choices.
Netflix, Amazon Prime, a bottomless archive of prestige dramas available at the click of a button.
Attention spans were shrinking, and the competition was no longer just the other soap opera on the rival broadcast network.
Right, the competition was the entire history of television, available instantly on a phone.
So think about this. Did Coronation Street orchestrate the Hell era purely out of a greedy, cynical desire for sensational ratings?
Or was it a terrified, desperate adaptation?
Is the traditional slow burn, multi-episode-a-week soap opera model fundamentally broken in an algorithm-driven world that demands instant gratification?
Did the producers look at a landscape that no longer has the patience for ordinary, quiet storytelling and decide that the only way to keep the lights on was to set the entire neighborhood on fire?
It's a terrifying thought.
Keep that in mind the next time you find yourself craving a cozy, familiar show. And ask yourself if the modern television industry even has the structural patience to make them anymore. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for listening.
Keep questioning the media you consume. Look for the mechanics behind the spectacle, and we'll see you next time.